What are your tattoo horror stories? Real customers are revealing their worst tattoo horror stories. My tattoo is a copy of a known gang tattoo. At 18 years old, I asked the artist for a tattoo of a phoenix. Years later I found out that the tattoo I got is an exact copy of a known gang tattoo. After lots of cover-up work and some dented pride, I no longer look like a total contradiction of myself. Lesson of the year: run a reverse Google image search on that original tattoo design the artist says he designed for you just to make sure. Redditor's Bear 64. I passed out while getting a piercing. I passed out and potentially had a seizure while getting my lip pierced. The chair was in front of a wall-length mirror. I decided to look at myself while the needle was in my lip, while the piercer turned to pick up the jewelry, and then I woke up with 3 people going, "Are you okay? Seriously, are you okay? Do you want some water?" The receptionist said I was jerking around like I was having a seizure. Redditor Chris IT. I didn't end up with the design I asked for. Asked for a rose, got a cabbage. Redditor Wonder Weeble. I got the head of a cobra on my shoulder that ended up looking more like a pickle. Anonymous Redditor. The piercer pierced my tongue upside down. I first got my tongue pierced in 1996. There weren't a lot of people doing it or that had it done at this point. I was underage getting it done with a fake ID. The guy pulls out my tongue with the forceps and then stabs it and goes to put the stud through and says, "OSHT, it's upside down," and my reaction was to say UTO, which made my tongue slip out. He ended up having to do the whole thing again. There was blood everywhere and it hurt like a bastard, and he gave me a discount for the hassle. After about 10 days my tongue was still so swollen and hurt badly that my mom offered me some cash if I would just take it out. Redditor Undercover Nerd. I went in for a touch-up way too early. I have the words "let it be" on my chest. Everything was fine to begin with. I was pleasantly shocked at how little it hurt because of it being on my chest. It was all good for about a week, but where it was a new tattoo my bra had rubbed on it and faded some of the lettering. I go back to the tattooist. I had only used this place once because my usual artist was all booked up. I show him that it had faded and he told me to go upstairs where he would touch it up. Oh holy hell, the pain. In comparison to the first time round, I could have probably gouged out one of his eyes. Obviously now I know why it hurt so damn much the second time around, but he should have known as a tattoo artist not to go over it so soon. Yes, he did the touch-up for free obviously, but his inexperience annoyed me. I'm now left with a blown-out tattoo on my chest. Blown out means the ink has sort of expanded. Sort of like when you put a bit of ink on paper and it goes a bit bigger. Getting it covered at some point though. Redditor Asylum. The piercer dropped her tool and almost split my earlobe. I was pierced at a hairdresser 20-some years ago when the guns were made out of metal, really heavy. The girl that did mine dropped it while it was in my ear and the hole became a long line, almost splitting my lobe. I've never worn earrings in it because the weight of a simple earring hurt. Then she managed to do the same exact thing on the other side. Redditor Invisible. My tattoo artist handed the job off to his apprentice. I was 18 and the guy I wanted to do it palmed the job off to his apprentice. He didn't even watch her. She went too deep and now the tattoo is permanently and pretty severely raised. The lines aren't straight, you can't really read what it says, and now it's too big, thick, and raised to cover without costing an arm and a leg. Redditor Mads Reddit. The piercer was unhygienic. I had an artist remove some scar tissue on my earlobes, and at one point he stepped away to grab something out of a dusty supply box with his gloves on, then proceeded to work on me. Later I noticed that the jewelry in my freshly cut earlobe had in fact been the jewelry that was in my other ear. It must have slipped out, and when he realized the sterilized jewelry wasn't fitting, he slipped in the dirty jewelry. When I had asked him, he ignored me and changed the subject. Perfect example of why you should research more about your artist/piercer, even if they are your friend. Redditor CRE217. I farted while getting my tattoo. When I was getting my tattoo, I farted so bad accidentally. I was wearing a skirt too, so no real barrier, but that probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. The fart was so awful. I don't know what happened, it just slipped out. It was so rancid. After a few moments of noxious, uncomfortable silence, the woman doing the tattoo finally goes, "Honey, what did you eat?" and opened the window. I was so mortified. Tattoo turned out great though. Redditor Mathemestic Scientist. The piercer made fun of me for crying. I got my ears pierced when I was 9. She dropped the stud on the floor and put it in my ear anyway. I cried because I thought my ear was going to get infected, which it did. That ear swelled up quite a bit more than the other one. Then she made fun of me for crying because I was supposedly the first kid in a long time who actually cried. Anonymous Redditor. The tattoo artist dropped his tools on my foot and broke my toenail off. I'm a pretty smallish girl and my dad is a huge guy who looks pretty menacing, actually a giant teddy bear. He met me at the tattoo parlor because he had never seen a tattoo being done and was curious. I had already gotten settled into the chair and the artist was about to get started when my father's giant frame filled the doorway. The artist dropped the tools he was using on my foot and broke my toenail off. My dad had to reassure him that he was cool with it before the artist would tattoo me. The broken toenail ended up being more painful than the actual tattoo. Redditor Liquid Honey. I got in trouble for arriving too early to my appointment. I was 10 minutes early for my appointment. Instead of just letting me know she wasn't totally ready yet, she had a saucy tone and interrupted me by saying, "Well, if you called I would have probably been ready, but I set up exactly for the appointment, so you'll have to wait about 20 to 30 minutes. Next time let me know before you just show up." She had a super bitcha tone and seemed mad that I was early. Not letting someone pierce my nipples, who gets that awful over an early client. Redditor Heather Marmal. Something tells me this guy got unfriended. My best friend went to a guy he knew who did tattoos as a hobby at his house. He wanted unforgiving tattooed down his forearm. They decided to get drunk and pop some pills as he is getting the tattoo. My friend passes out. He wakes up a few hours later and looks over at the tattoo guy, who is staring at the floor with a look of defeat on his face. "I fucked up, man," he said. My friend looks down at his new unfriend forearm tattoo. Amerzo 1991. I went to my old roommate's friend for a tattoo of Jellyfish on my ribs. He drew it up. It looked great, but he drew it on graph paper and said it was just to help him with the dimensions. Okay, cool, no problem. When he started, I thought this dude had mad allergies. He was sniffling so much, but nah. He had a wicked cocaine addiction, was on pills, and ended up tattooing the entire grid paper on my side. I sat for 6 to 7 hours straight because I didn't want to seem like a pussy. In the end, I had to get a 14-hour cover-up done on it. I'll never get my other rib tattooed. Black Hat Skirt. Never trust your ex with a tattoo. My ex is a tattoo artist and has done most of my work. He left us the day after our son was born, and it wasn't until 5 years later that I ran into him again. I was cordial, I had forgiven him long ago, and was happy in my new life as a single mom. I asked him for a tattoo, the least he could do, right, and he complied. He drew up a beautiful tribal rosebush that I wanted as a tramp stamp. He starts working, and about an hour later, I looked to see how it was coming along. The bastard stuck our son's name on my lower back. In his handwriting. It doomed my sex life for a while. I, for one, can't believe this isn't a word. We're an hour into the tattoo, well into the color, when my girl asks me if there's meant to be an E there. I sit back. My blood goes cold. The world slows to a halt. The more I frantically read the word develop in my head, the less it sounds and looks like a word. I tear off my gloves and consult Uncle Google, and, no, it is not a word. Real Shusty Rackleford. The bread is pretty great too, just sayin'. A guy who didn't speak English very well came in and asked for the word Hovis on his arm. Confused, we repeatedly asked if he definitely wanted Hovis, like the bread. We wrote it out on paper, but he kept saying, yes, yes. So my boss did it. The next day he comes in with his very angry brother who explained he wanted Elvis. Dead social. You can't fault the tattoo artist here. A customer of mine went to Spain for a tattoo and asked the artist for a love heart with Margaret in the middle. The artist didn't speak a word of English, so he asked for it to be written down exactly what he wanted done. Well, he did get exactly what he wrote down. MacDow 85. Isla Trist. There's a possibility that this girl was seriously embarrassed. I have this friend who has quite a few tattoos. She had been planning on getting a large infinity sign, like the sideways 8, followed by the word possibilities up the length of her forearm. The idea was to have infinite possibilities, kind of an affirmation. Well, she got it and loved it. She posted it on Facebook and Instagram, tagged her artist and went about her day. I had to call her and tell her the bad news. Her arm said, possibilities. Ickled 13. His tattoo doesn't lie. My friend let a random girl scrawl John Lennon's quote, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans," onto his rib cage, but he was on numbing drugs and only let her get halfway through, so he has a tattoo that says, "Life is what happens to you." Which is 100% better, anyway. Gungagalunga. A guy was getting tattooed on his arm and started to look pale. My friend knows the signs all too well and asks if he needs a break or something to eat or drink. Client says, "Nope, all good. Keep going." Sure enough, within 10 minutes, the client slumps over having fainted, and then proceeds to violently shit his pants. Safe to say that tattoo chair had to get thrown out. MS Bobby Jenkins.